In the year 1515, a woman named Margaret Schmidt was dragged into a dark dungeon in Nuremberg. She screamed that she'd rather be burned alive than face what was waiting inside. Within 6 hours, she was begging for death. But even that wasn't the worst part. Margaret faced a device so terrifying that even the toughest prisoners confessed to crimes they never committed just to escape it. It was a machine that broke people's minds, without spilling a single drop of blood. And the most shocking part? The church called it merciful. By the end of this story, you'll understand why historians tried to erase its existence, and why modern experts still study the cruel psychology behind it. But before we open this dark chapter of history, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You'll need something lighter after hearing what's next. I'm about to tell you 3 disturbing truths about a device so cruel that people begged to die rather than face it. A method that could destroy a person's sanity in just hours. And why the church believed this horror was an act of mercy. Let's start with the machine itself. To understand what's coming, imagine life in medieval Europe, a time when justice wasn't about fairness or second chances. It was about getting confessions, no matter the cost. Torture wasn't a crime. It was a profession, perfected by church and state. But by the 1500s, something had changed. Torturers had learned that the human mind breaks faster than the body. Physical pain had limits, people could pass out or die too soon. But psychological torture could last forever, keeping the victim awake, aware, and terrified every second. Authorities needed confessions for witch trials, heresy, and political plots. They needed names, details, and more suspects. Old torture methods killed too many victims before they talked. So, they created something new. A device that redefined human suffering not through pain, but through fear. It used the most dangerous weapon imaginable, the human imagination. This is the story of the Iron Maiden, but not the one you think you know. What I'm about to tell you will change the way you see medieval justice and the human mind. The machine that awaited Margaret Schmidt wasn't built to kill her quickly. Picture this. You're standing in a cold stone room, torches flicker on damp walls. In front of you stands a tall metal cabinet shaped like a human body, with a face carved into it, twisted in agony. The door creaks open, and you see sharp iron spikes covering the inside. Here's the secret most people don't know. Those spikes weren't made to kill instantly. Hans Schmidt, no relation to Margaret, was Nuremberg's executioner from 1501 to 1532. In his diary, he described how the spikes were carefully placed to avoid vital organs. They would pierce the body when the door closed, in the shoulders, chest, and legs, but not enough to cause quick death. Victims could survive for many hours, sometimes days. But the true horror wasn't the pain, it was the waiting. Imagine being trapped inside that coffin, unable to move, with spikes pressing against your flesh. Every breath drives them in deeper. Every heartbeat spreads new waves of pain. You can't see. You can't move. You can only wait. And before sealing the door, the executioner explained exactly what would happen. How the spikes would slowly push deeper as you breathed. How your own body would torture itself. He'd remind you that you could stop at any time, just confess. Hans Schmidt wrote that most people broke within the first hour. Not from pain, but from pure terror. Margaret confessed after 2 hours. She claimed to have worked with the devil and gave the names of 17 other witches. Then she begged to be executed immediately. But Nuremberg officials weren't done. They wanted something even more effective. They modified the Iron Maiden and turned it into one of the most horrifying devices in history. The change was small but cruel. They added tiny holes in the face of the Iron Maiden. The prisoner could now see outside. Why? Because complete darkness wasn't the worst torture. Seeing everything but doing nothing was. Through those holes, victims could watch others being tortured. They could see the executioner's tools. They could see the crowd watching them, but they couldn't move, scream properly, or beg for mercy. The Spanish Inquisition records tell us what happened next. In 1487, a woman named Maria Gonzalez was placed inside one of these viewing maidens. Within 1 hour, she confessed to heresy. By the 3rd hour, she gave the names of others. By evening, she was begging to die. That's a total mental breakdown in less than 6 hours. Modern psychology explains why it worked so well. When a person can see but can't act, when they witness suffering but can't stop it, their mind collapses. It's called learned helplessness. The victim becomes trapped not just in the device but inside their own mind. Dr. Margaret Rothsky, a modern expert who studied historical torture, described it this way: the viewing holes created a cruel illusion. The victim was both alone and being watched. That mental contradiction breaks a person faster than pain ever could. Records show that victims confess to anything, even accused friends and family, just to make it stop. But believe it or not, what came next was even worse. In 1523, Pope Adrian issued a decree allowing a kinder version called the Iron Maiden of Mercy. This version had no spikes. At first, it sounded like an improvement, no physical pain. But the Church had discovered something more terrifying: pure psychological torture. Imagine being shut inside a metal coffin in total blackness. You can't move and there is barely enough air to keep you alive. There are no spikes ready to cut your skin. There is no obvious physical threat. Just empty time and waiting. Official papal papers explain the cruel thinking behind this design. The idea was that a sinner left alone for an unknown length of time in total darkness would think about their sins and seek forgiveness by telling the truth. But the real horror was different. Prisoners placed in the so-called merciful Iron Maiden faced total sensory deprivation plus the terror of never knowing if or when they would be freed. Brother Francesco de Marco, a monk who used this method in Rome, recorded how effective it was. His notes say prisoners began to hallucinate in hours. They reported voices of dead relatives. They claimed to see demons moving in the blackness. They confessed to crimes that existed only inside their damaged minds. De Marco wrote about Lorenzo Medici, accused of heresy, who was put in the Maiden of Mercy at dawn. By noon, he was crying. By evening, he talked to his dead mother. By the next dawn, he had been accused of witchcraft, even though there was no proof of such acts. The worst part is that some prisoners who tried both machines begged to be returned to the spiked Iron Maiden rather than stay in the merciful one. The spikes hurt less than the mind. One prisoner wrote in a secret letter smuggled out of a papal jail. The Church said this was progress because no blood was spilled, no bones were broken, and technically, there was no physical harm. They thought they had a kinder way to make people confess. But here is the final, darker truth about the Iron Maiden, the fact that changed what we believed about medieval torture. Are you ready for the most shocking part? The Iron Maiden was often empty. Archaeologists digging in medieval torture sites across Europe found something historians had hidden for decades. Many of the Iron Maidens found in castles and inquisition rooms showed no signs of use. There were no blood stains on the spikes, nowhere marks from desperate prisoners, no scratches from fingernails trying to claw out. Instead, they found complex mechanisms made to create sound effects. Dr. Heinrich Müller, who excavated at Nuremberg Castle in 1987, found pulleys, bells, and echo chambers built into the base of an Iron Maiden. When these devices were used, they could mimic the sounds of someone trapped inside. Groans, pleading, even the cracking noise of spikes entering flesh. The greatest psychological torture was not physical at all. It was a theater. Here is how it worked. A prisoner was brought into the torture room and shown the Iron Maiden. Paid actors would give supposed testimonies about what they had suffered. The prisoner would hear recorded or created sounds of a person being tortured inside the machine. Then the prisoner was told that if they confessed now, they could avoid that fate. If they did not confess, they might be forced to experience it themselves. The result was shocking. The confession rate climbed above 90%. The Spanish Inquisition perfected this approach, building what they called confession theaters. Whole chambers were planned to destroy a prisoner's mind before any real physical torture began. This discovery changed how historians view medieval justice. The era we thought was all about crude physical torture was actually far more complex and far more sinister. These people were not only torturers. They were masters of psychological warfare. Techniques invented for the Iron Maiden influenced later interrogation methods. The good cop, bad cop pattern, psychological pressure instead of brute force, invented false situations to get confessions. These ideas echo back to the methods used around Iron Maidens. Military psychologists who studied these old records helped shape interrogation tactics used in World War II, the Cold War, and modern counterterrorism. The most disturbing result was how false confessions from the Iron Maiden theater fed the European witch hunts. Thousands of innocent people were executed because they had confessed under pure psychological force. The machine that was supposed to find the truth made elaborate lies instead. It turned neighbors into accusers, split families, and made whole communities instruments of persecution. By the late 1500s, the Iron Maiden vanished from torture rooms, not because it was too cruel, but because officials learned that confessions produced by psychological tricks were often useless for actual legal evidence. However, its legacy remained in ways that still affect us. The Iron Maiden taught a terrifying lesson about human nature. Our minds can break more easily than our bodies. The worst torture may need no physical violence at all. This device changed the meaning of justice. Confession was no longer a moral choice. It became a product of psychological pressure. Fear could be invented. Guilt could be planted. The truth could be shaped by those who controlled the story. We still wrestle with these lessons today. Consider how many court cases today could still be affected by similar hidden pressures, masked as legal procedure or expert interrogation, shaping outcomes long before facts are fairly examined. Worldwide now, false confessions still cause wrongful convictions. Psychological interrogation ideas keep evolving. The line between true justice and psychological coercion remains dangerously thin. The Iron Maiden may be gone, but its shadow falls on our legal systems, our study of human behavior, and our idea of humane treatment. So here is my question for you. Think hard about this before you answer. With what we now know about the power of psychological tricks, how can we ever be sure a confession is truly voluntary? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If this look into history's darkest inventions disturbed you as it did me, please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.